Hi everybody. Today we want to talk about the very important subject of conversation in relationships. There are different types of styles and content of conversation in relationships. And oftentimes the two people in a relationship may not have the same style of communication, and it causes frustration because one doesn't know that the other one is missing that kind of conversation in their lives, and it causes a lot of discontent. So you've done a wonderful job of kind of itemizing what the different styles of conversation are. So if you can make people aware of what they are, maybe we'll save a few marriages. Okay.
So I feel that I feel like there are 4 or 5 different styles. So one is the random style, which everybody has, right? Some people are more about small talk in their, in their lives in general, and also with their spouse. Some people are more intellectual, deep thinkers, spiritual people maybe, and they need that kind of lifestyle, or a conversational style.
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle, true. Yeah. And then there is talking about our relationship, which some people don't want to talk about at all. And some people really need to discuss, what's, happening between us. What are my buttons? What are your buttons? And otherwise they feel like they're completely isolated in the relationship, or completely lonely in the relationship, that we're more like roommates than in a relationship, than in a romantic relationship. So, I mean, even with roommates, you want to discuss a little bit, like, I don't know, when you wash the floor, when you do the shopping, But, and if you hurt each other's buttons, then you want to be able to say it.
Yes.
And when you're not able to say it, then you feel repressed.
Right.
And when you feel repressed, you feel like your cortisol levels are starting to rise up. And then you feel like your emotional system is shutting down, and secondary to that, your health system is starting to shut down also. So, and then of course, if you have children, you need to talk about your children, and so that's pretty much it. Right? Oh, okay. Then there's the underground conversation, but that should have also a conversation. And that goes into the box of talking about our relationship, about our emotions, which has to do with our touching system, with like how we touch each other, and sexuality. And I'm actually like I'm differentiating them into 2 parts. It's not just the sexuality, because there is some touching that is unsexual,
right?
And whether it's cuddling or whatever it is, for a different couple may be different, and we need to discuss that.
Yes. And
when we take things for granted, then it's a pantry for trouble to grow in.
Yeah.
So those are basically, I think we named 5 conversations that we basically need to have with each other. And then there is the other thing, which is also managing our silence.
Right.
Like we need silence, and we need to live peacefully with our silence.
Right.
And when we don't live peacefully with our silence, or there are some conversations that are not taking space, and one of us is really missing that conversation, then the silence becomes an awkward silence.
Oppressive.
oppressive, and that silence it grows. It becomes the big white elephant in the room.
Oh yeah.
And that's the worst.
And actually that can happen with the other kinds of communication if they're not going on. If I'm not able to have a conversation on my spiritual development with my husband or my emotional development with my husband, that becomes an awkward silence too.
Right. Right. Basically, whatever I want to have the conversation about, if the other spouse is not accommodating that conversation,
yeah,
and maybe I've tried that conversation before and I felt like it's not getting there. It's
not connecting.
Not connecting, yeah. Then I learned to not talk about it.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah, but we don't realize the depth of damage that does to our relationships over time.
Right. I mean, what we just said sounds very, like it should be simple, right? It should be so taken for granted. It should be so obvious. But it's you need to be conscious about it.
Yeah.
Once both parties are conscious about it, it could be a lifesaver for so many relationships.
Definitely.
So if you're listening to this and you want to send it to your spouse and say, those are the conversations that we need to have. I just realized that I wanted to talk about ABC, but I wasn't able to, or maybe I've tried before. And now that I realized that, that was the issue between us, and the awkward silence is because we didn't have that in that conversation, and I really need to have that in that conversation so that the awkward silence will not grow between us.
What would be a good silence?
A good silence, I think, is like the beginning of the relationship silence, when we're just happy to breathe the same air, and everything, we're both comfortable in saying what we need to say, and we're not afraid that we're going to be judged for our beliefs, thoughts, ideas, desires, etc.
Right.
And we both feel it.
Right.
We both feel the genuinity, the truthfulness, that we're completely open with each other on everything, and when something needs to be said, it will be said. And so like when we just whatever, go on a hike or whatever, look at the sunset together, whatever it is, we feel comfortable with that. Or even lying in each other's arms, we feel comfortable in that silence.
Sounds good. But what happens if one person in the relationship just can't talk about their emotions? They can't share their emotions. Like, how do you work around that?
You need to be able to also talk about not being able to talk. So if one spouse is and usually it is like that, in most relationships I think it's like that, then one spouse is more communicative than the other, and more emotionally equipped than the other.
Right.
Because we're here to help each other develop. So, but if only one party feels starved out of a conversation, then they're responsible to going and saying, those are the conversations that we need to have.
Okay.
Open up the gate to that conversation.
All right.
And hopefully the other spouse will pick up on it and will not gaslight them, and will not say, well, I don't know what you're talking about, or,
right.
Well, if you would want, if you have something to say, you say it. I have nothing to say, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if they'll be wise enough to not react in that way, but to say, yes, okay, I hear you, tell me please what you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they need to be wise enough to be able to say, to accommodate an opening, an emotional opening, to be a vessel, because there are all those things that we would say, you know, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Or like,
I can't do it. I just can't.
Or like, I can't do it. Or like, I didn't, you know, there was no problem between us. Everything is just fine between us.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Or, what's that stupid thing, you know, like whatever that you know, like like whatever, whether it's about culture or politics or religion, you know, like that stupid video that you sent me, or that stupid article that you were reading, or whatever it is, right? And then you feel like you cannot share your world of view and beliefs and interests. So the other person needs to be wise enough to say an opening sentence that will allow them to continue to open up and not shut down.
Compassion
Compassion is the key word here, I guess. Yeah, you're right.
You're talking about compassion.
Right.
That we have to, no matter what's happening, we have to try to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person.
Right.
Yep.
To hear them out and not to open up our egos instead of, like, you know, saying, I have no idea what they're talking about. Yes, you do, if you wouldn't want to.
Yep. If you guys have any questions, you can always, you know, put them in the comments, and this wise woman here will answer them for you. The two of us may not have the communication ability. There are ramifications if the two people in the relationship don't address where the communication style is wanting. So if your partner doesn't want to, for their own emotional reasons, deal with their emotional issues, they can't be treating you like, you know, there's something wrong with you. They have to be treating you with respect, that if you're having this experience, that it needs to be addressed in some way. You know, even if the person admits, look, I have issues, I can't deal with it, I understand where you're coming from, that would be like wonderful.
Right.
You could save a marriage.
Right.
I just can't deal with it.
Right.
That would save marriages, just to validate.
Exactly, the validation versus the gaslighting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know if that requires a level of emotional intelligence.
Humility. Key word. Humility.
And we're not all the same. You know, we have psychological scars. You know, some people can work very well in this area, and some people may work very well in that area.
Right.
But, like, at least be conscious that there are these 5 different communication styles, and that they're supposed to be going on in the relationship. And if they're not, that the relationship is going to erode over time if it's not addressed in some way. It has to be discussed.
If you're going to try to repress the issues that are inconvenient for you in the relationship and not discuss them, then it's going to rise up and ruin the relationship eventually.
Yeah. But that's a level of respect. You know,
and that's true love also. Because the truest love in the world is to listen, to give space for the person to open up. That's the biggest favor we can do for a person. Think how much better you feel after you talk to a friend. And somehow in a relationship, so many people don't have it. Like, it's so many marriages are anything but a relationship. They're a partnership. You know, maybe, you know, and a mutual enterprise, but not a relationship.
Like, your spouse is so concerned that your physical needs are being taken care of, right? They have to be the same level of concern that your emotional needs are being taken care of.
Right.
Even if they can't understand them or they don't know what to do, they have to be aware that there are emotional needs.
In the ketubah, the husbands actually sign that they're going to take care of your physical needs,
right?
And amongst those are the sexual needs that are actually signed in the ketubah.
Right.
They're actually being discussed in the ketubah. So there was one rabbi who said that the sexual needs are 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24/7. So what he meant by saying that, he explained that when you do the dishes, it's a part of your orgasm, actually. Like when he does the dishes, it's on the way to your orgasm as well as the further stages in bed.
Right.
So
it's foreplay.
It's foreplay. But what I want to say is that also our conversation, being able to be emotionally open and say everything that we have on our minds, is definitely, it's more than doing the dishes. It's more than doing the laundry. It's more than helping with the physical needs around the house or taking care of the kids. It's the foundation to relaxation and feeling close with each other. And when the emotional space doesn't exist, then obviously the sexual part will eventually also be out the window.
Yeah. Acknowledge it. Validate the feeling of the other person in the relationship. I may not understand why you feel the way you do, but it's okay. The fact that you're feeling that way is okay.
Right.
Right. Instead of dismissing it, it's okay.
Right. And instead of being, instead of carrying frustrations and, accumulating frustrational points, we should be able to come and say, these are my needs, and please let's talk about them.
On both sides.
Yes. Yes.
We've had that discussion. Like, men have needs too.
Right.
They can talk about them.
For sure.
That would be amazing. Instead of just letting things go on the way they are and being dissatisfied. Or maybe it could be like a negotiation. Right. You do this for me, I can do that for you.
Right. It's like if we need a financial recovery, right? We go to the bank, we take a loan, we decide, we're going to do this or that, to recover financially, right? How come we don't do it with our marriage? How come we don't do it with our emotional space, with ourselves and with our spouses?
I don't know. I really don't know.
People just let it go and go and go and go. We're living in a time where we're talking about 80% of people being emotionally divorced from each other. 80%.
Everything to each other. Why don't we? Why can't we? Why can't we say it's just
we become the most repressed with the person who's supposed to be the closest to us.
Yes, it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And we're busy saying men speak one language and women speak another language. We're speaking about the same issues.
Everybody has emotions.
Right. Everyone has emotions. Some people may be repressing them. People may be fearful of them. Some people may be open about them. But yeah, and that is the key thing that holds people together in a relationship. And yet we can't turn around and say, look, you're stepping on my feelings by doing this or that. Or, can we change this movie?
How come it's easier for us to reveal our bodies, right? People are so shameful about our bodies. But how come it's so much easier for us to reveal our bodies in such a promiscuous era? We're living in such a promiscuous era. It's okay to reveal our bodies, but it's totally not okay to reveal our soul.
I don't know.
It should be vice versa, right? That we should be able to reveal our soul before we should be able to reveal our bodies.
I guess it's what's socially accepted.
Right, the norms have changed.
The norms have changed. It's what's socially accepted.
Right, but we're hurting ourselves in the long run.
Yeah.
Because when we expose our bodies to someone who eventually we won't be able to expose our soul to, then we're going to end up feeling empty on both ends.
Empty. You feel
Right.
empty.
Physically and emotionally. Right? So what we need to discuss is that we want to be able to get sexually involved only with people that we can open up with emotionally. So, and nowadays it's exactly the opposite. It's like people get into bed after a first date. Even in the religious world, the number of people that I hear that are getting intimate within a couple of days,
Yeah.
is unbelievably high.
I know.
So it's like we're getting more and more repressed and more promiscuous, and we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing to our soul in the long run? And like in a way, the religious world is discussing it on a religious level and not enough on an emotional level. The whole Shmir Negia thing, the whole thing of not touching each other, is being discussed as something that is forbidden by God, instead of asking ourselves, how is it hurting us that we're being promiscuous and open with our bodies, but we're not being open with our souls?
Isn't the reason that we have that in place so that men and women can get to know each other's soul first?
Right.
Without complicating it with physical issues?
Right. I actually had someone else walk over to my husband and ask him halachically if it's okay for him to go to another woman when his wife is nida. So you would be like, for those of you who don't know, nida is the 7 days or the 14 days when men and women are not, or husbands and wives are not allowed to be together while her period and 7 days after. So he asked my husband halachically if it's okay for him to go to another woman, not understanding that those 14 days are actually given to us so that we have the opportunity to develop our emotional skills, to develop our emotional connection, not based on our sexuality. And the whole time before the wedding is also all that time that we can, take that instead of worrying so much about conquering our hormones, we should be worried about how much we manage to open up to each other. If we manage to open up to each other emotionally, then it's going to be a good marriage. If we don't manage to open up to each other emotionally and sustain our emotional needs, then this marriage doesn't have a future. It's going to dissolve.
Yeah. It's like
God doesn't want to torture us with don't have sex 14 days a month. And I know so many people are struggling with those 14 days with like the halachic side of it, instead of asking themselves, what is the emotional purpose of it? What can it give me? What can we do good with these 14 days? How can we develop our romance? How can we develop other sides, other aspects of our relationship, our conversational, emotional aspects?
Yeah.
Is sex the only thing that's holding our intimacy? Or is our intimacy, can our intimacy be much richer?
It can. It can. Thank you. Or they don't express their emotion. What kind of a society are we living in? Why is it like that? Why aren't men allowed to express their feelings.
Well, I think that, one of the things that I'm getting is that, well, I don't know, it's a big question, but I feel that the smartphones, for example, have allowed us, the smartphone is the new cigarette, right? It's like, it's the worst addiction because it's an addiction, but it's not such a bad addiction. So like, people will be sitting with their nose in their smartphones, with their faces in their smartphones, and ignoring what needs to be discussed, and ignoring the fact that there's even someone in the room, that their spouse is in the room, that their children are in the room.
I know.
So it's like, first of all, we need to, ask ourselves, is that the kind of environment that we want to hold? Is that kind of space that we want to hold in our house? So, and it takes two for tango, obviously, But if one of you is more evolved and understands that something is not right here, then they need to awaken that understanding.
I think Shabbat is wonderful for that.
Right.
I find that conversation in my relationship is so much better on Shabbat.
Right.
Because we are forced to look each other in the eye and actually talk. There's nowhere to escape to.
Right.
Such a wonderful gift. But I don't know, it would be nice if people were more aware of taking that same consciousness, bringing it in the week, maybe setting aside time during the day where they put their phones away and they look at each other in the eye and they converse.
It's like we don't prioritize I think that's the key issue. We don't prioritize our emotional state, our emotional existence.
Yeah.
Our emotional state of mind.
Yeah.
And we have to first of all prioritize our emotional state of mind.
Mm-hmm.
We have to understand, first of all, that illness comes from suppressed emotions. I mean, all the research talks about it already. It's nothing new.
Right.
There's so much research about it.
Mm-hmm.
Reb Nachman spoke about it 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Kabbalah spoke about it even earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But now there's all this research on how suppressed emotions are the key cause to cancer, to autoimmune diseases, to heart attacks, everything. So we have to. So if it's like it says, mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. From sometimes for the wrong reasons you end up doing the right thing. So at least we need to figure out that if you want to be physically okay, then you have to be emotionally okay. And in order to be emotionally okay, loneliness, and when I mean loneliness, it's not just being alone. Being alone in a relationship is much worse than being alone. Solitude could be a very blessed thing. To sit in front of the beach, or even take a hike on your own, or just to read a book, or do something. You can sustain yourself in solitude in a very positive way. Being alone in an awkward silence is the worst loneliness in the world. So if we want to stay physically okay, we do not only have to exercise and eat well and whatever. We also need to understand that we need to sustain our emotional well-being. And in order to sustain our emotional well-being, we have to have emotional conversations with our close ones. And to know that you're coming back to somebody, if you're having this whole great day out with your colleagues, with your friends, and to know that you're coming back home to be with someone that is, like your home should be your peace, your island of peace. And if you're coming home knowing that you're not coming into an energy that is healthy for you emotionally, that's so energy draining. Yeah. Imagine you invite a guest that you really don't want to be in their energy. and they're stuck in your house. And now what are you going to do with it, right? So it's like, imagine living a whole life like that with a spouse that you don't want to be in their energies. So in order to not get ourselves into that situation and to not get sick physically, we need to understand that we need to build our emotional environment by creating and demanding certain conversations to happen.
Yeah. That's a wonderful encapsulation. I'm glad we added that on.